Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And we are meeting once again with lecture 30 of Business English. Well, students, congratulations. You are finished with your course of Business English. And these three lectures, lecture 30, lecture 31, and lecture 32 are going to be last three lectures of the course and are going to be a series of revision what we have covered so far. So let's talk about now, starting from lecture 1, what we covered till lecture 11. Alright, so in lecture 1, what we talked about, we had our course orientation and we talked about the basics of business communication, basics of language efficiency in business management. So let's talk about the things that we discussed regarding business communication. Business writing has covered basic writing skills to enable students to write. This course, Business Writing English, was basically aimed at enabling you to write effective business letters, memorandums, minutes, resume and reports, and oral presentation skills, as well as to enable you to have effective listeners of business communication. I hope that with going through all these lectures, the drills, the activities that we could do, and the discussions we could get indulged in, we are able to understand the norms and traditions of all the business documentation as well as business activities, including oral presentations and listening scenario expectations. Lecture 1 was about basic communication, participants of communication process, role of information technology in business communication, and we discussed some communication barriers too. Well, look at this image. This exactly talks about the most of the participants which are usually involved in a communication process. In business communication, you have the medium, you have the value involved, worth of the message, there are barriers, there are always barriers, and you always have an audience, role of information technology, and the message itself. Now, what is this medium about? This medium can be verbal, this medium can be visual. In verbal, this can be face-to-face. In verbal, this can be individual to a group. This can be group to an individual. It can be information technology assisted. It can be paper-based. It can be an image. It can be a visual. So the medium can be any. So whatever medium you are using, you have to be well informed why you are using it, how the communication is to be made, and it is important to select an appropriate medium for the message, because something that can be best achieved with a picture, if you're going to use a letter format for that, your communication may not be successful. So need to consider the needs of the sender, the nature of the receiver, and the aims of the communication. These three things will enable you to make a decision and choose your medium. Inappropriate medium can be a barrier to effective communication. Now look at the value. Value includes motivation, clarity of line management, reflection, coordination and organization of the business. Well, what value your message has and how much value do you expect and do you give it to it? Vast majority of problems in business are caused by ineffective communication in one form or another. Business essentially human-focused organizations, and value of good communications therefore estimable. Like, you cannot estimate how much value this keeps. Audience to whom you are communicating. This can be a formal situation with formal audience. It can be informal situation. This can be your staff. This can be your immediate boss. You are talking to employees. You are talking to employer, customer, clients, shareholder, stakeholders, suppliers, local community, public. Anybody can be your audience. Always be informed of your audience, because that is going to make a difference. Who the communication is aimed at is an important factor. The nature of the medium and the content may depend on who it is aimed at, and it may change. The same message may get changed in its format when the audiences get changed. Necessity of being sensitive to the receiver is a key to be successful. Should communication be formal or informal? That's a question that is again answered when you have complete knowledge about your audience, or as much as possible. For example, email communication, does it need to adhere to normal values or of spelling, of punctuation and grammar? Is it appropriate to use text-speak? So all these questions are always good to ask when you have information about your audience. Now, we are going to talk about the type of message that can be an important factor in determining the medium, content and approach. What message do we want to convey? Is it, because in communication there is always a message. Is it a good news message or a bad news message, or information or instruction, or we want somebody to take a decision? Each of the above may require a different approach, a document requirement, or a different medium. So it's always the selection of medium also depends on the kind of message that you are conveying. So the aim of the message, the purpose of the message, the type of the message, whether it's clear or confused, or it has to be clear or it has to be confused, what is the importance of it? Knowing about all these aspects will enable you to determine all the related aspects. What is the communication designed to achieve? This needs to be considered carefully to judge the best method of delivery and to judge the effectiveness of the feedback as to whether the message has been successful or not. Now, this is very important. Role of information technology, where you know that world is growing every day, every minute, and it is, most of it is because of the technology that is there. And information technology has a very significant role to play in the field of business. So what speed do you require? What speed it will take for this message to reach the audience? What is the value of accuracy in the message? Can I correct it later on? What is the clarity aspect? Is it personal or is it impersonal? Is it cost versus benefit situation? Or is it like win-to-win situation, or win or lose situation? So you need to understand your environment. You need to understand the need of the activity. Then you decide the role of information technology, and then once you decide it, you look at all these aspects that are there to be considered. Alright, this was all about our lecture 1. Now let's see what do we have to discuss about lecture 2. Well, lecture 2 was all about nature of barriers, communication failure, defensiveness, and defensiveness where employer versus employee or employee versus employer. These are the participants that we discussed, and analysis of communication barriers and effective communication. Look at the goal of communication. An effective communication, is aimed at achieving to promote some kind of action, to ensure understanding, to persuade, to get and give information, and to change behavior. All the time, whenever you are communicating, you are basically doing either one or many of them together. A basic model of the communication process involves a channel, leader, a sender, receiver, and feedback loop. So if the sender is the leader, the position will change, and if the receiver is audience, or there are many in number, the position will change. All the time this potential of the sender and receiver change according to the type and nature of the sender and receiver. However, in the model of communication, you can see a point where you can have potential barriers. And it depends on the medium what you are using, what kind of barriers you can face and what kind of challenges you can face. If you're dealing with a telephone as a medium to communicate your message, noise and distortion can be some of the barriers. However, some very common barriers in the communication process are noise, inappropriate medium, assumptions and misconception. You remember in the last lecture I discussed with you the assumption of my students expecting an article from me. emotions. You are too angry, you are upset, you are happy, you are overexcited. Language differences, you are dealing with another language. Cultural differences, what you are saying is normal to you, but it is offensive and offending in the other culture. Poor listening skills, use of jargons, and distractions. These are some of the barriers that play their role in making a message ambiguous or change the meaning, and we get what we are not, what is not meant to. So what we receive this message. Leader as communication champion. If you think you are a communication champion, you need to consider leader as, in this process, the role of internal and external sources when you are making this communication process. What is the involvement of strategic conversation? How do you have or promote an open climate of discussion? You listen, you become a patient listener. Discernment and dialogues. You are purpose directed, you direct attention to vision, values, desired outcomes, and you use persuasion. And you use methods with rich channels, stories and metaphors, informal communication. So if you are a leader or a champion of communication, these should be the aspects you should be very careful about. Now, 10 keys to effective listening. Well, listen actively. Or, how can you find out if you are a poor listener or a good listener? If you are a passive listener or if you're laid back, that's poor listening. If you ask questions, you paraphrase what is being said, you are an active listener. The second area is find areas of interest. Well, a poor listener will tune out dry subjects, and a good listener, however, will look for opportunities in learning and will come up with new learning in whatsoever it is there to learn from. Resist distractions. Well, a poor learner is easily distracted, and a good learner fights distractions, tolerates bad habits, and knows how to concentrate or come back onto the point. And then capitalize on the fact, and thought is faster than speed. So, poor learner tends to daydream with slow speakers. However, the good learners, they take up challenges, they anticipate, they summarize, they listen between lines to tone of voice. They try to interpret emotions as well. Be responsive, participate. Poor learner is minimally involved. They would stay away from the communication process. They will stay quiet. However, the active listeners, they can be quiet, but they would still participate by the expressions, by their gestures, by nodding head, or by showing it in their eyes, on their face. They will show interest and positive feedback. It can be verbal, it can be visual. Then judge content, not delivery or the one who is delivering. And the poor person tunes out if delivery is poor. He will not pay attention, or he or she will not take interest. However, a good person, a good listener, judges content, skips over delivery errors if there are any, and stay his or her prejudice aside if he or she has some prejudice with the speaker or who is the one who is delivering. Hold one's fire. Well, a poor listener has preconceptions, prejudices, biases, and he argues to feed his or her ego. However, good listener, they do not judge until comprehension is complete. Now, listen for ideas. Poor listeners, they listen for facts all the time. However, good listeners listen to central themes and then develop their links with all the facts and figures available. Listeners, one good aspect that you need to develop regarding listening is work at listening. Well, poor listener will show up no energy, will give no energy output, will fake attention as if they are giving or paying attention, but they are not. However, the good listener will work hard, exhibit active body state, and keep or maintain a positive eye contact. Builds for long-term relationship. Poor listeners resist difficult material in favor of light, easygoing, recreational material. However, the good listeners, they do not interpret or try and sell idea. They use influences to, understand and get into the depth of the idea. Alright, this was all about lecture 3. So let's start with lecture 4, and lecture 4 was about 7 C's of communication. What are these 7 C's? You can look at the screen. These are 7 C's that make your communication effective as far as the content is concerned. Well, 7 C's are about what of the communication, although we have been discussing hows of communication simultaneously, but this precisely addresses the what of communication. Though we apply this on to hows as well, but here I'm going to talk about the what's of communication. The idea, I'll talk about the idea of 7 C's. It's completeness, conciseness, consideration, concreteness, clarity, courtesy, and correctness. And this can be applied equally to both what's and hows. What is completeness? Well, message receiver, either listener or reader, desire complete information to their questions. That is, suppose you're working with multinational company who is engaging with engineering goods like air conditioners or heaters. Now let's say one of your major customers wants some technical information regarding thermostat, because he wants to convey the same to the end user. In this case, you have to provide him complete information in a short span of time. If possible, provide him some extra information which he does not know. In this way, you can maintain a good business relation with him. Otherwise, he may switch to another company if the information is incomplete, or if he has to come again and again to you to ask for your assistance. Now, in order to ensure completeness of your message, one way is to incorporate 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. The 5 question method is useful when you write requests, announcements, or other informative messages. For instance, to order, request merchandise, make clear what you want, when do you need it, and where do you want this to be sent. Conciseness is the 2nd C of communication process. It means convey the message by using fewest word. It deals with economy of words. Okay, and it means bring in practice your brevity, the pittiness of your message. Make it to the point, but at the same time complete. Conciseness is the prerequisite to effective business communication. As you know that all businessmen have very short time, so they always want to achieve more in small time. Hence a concise message saves the time and expenses for both the parties. Now, how to achieve this? For achieving the conciseness, you have to consider the following: avoid wordy expressions, include only relevant material, and avoid unnecessary repetition. Now, consideration. Consideration means to consider the receiver's interest, intention. It is very important in effective communication. While writing a message, you should always keep in mind your target group. Consideration is very important C among all the 7 C's. So 3 specific way to indicate consideration is focus on your audience instead of what I want or what we all want. Look at the audience you are dealing with and look what they want or you want. Show audience benefit or interest of the receiver. Emphasize positive, pleasant facts. Using you help you, but overuse lead a negative reaction. Well, the 4th C is concreteness. It means that message should be specific instead of general. Misunderstandings of words create problems for both parties. Especially it happens when you are into relationships. Sender and receiver, they both feel that they are right. However, the mistake lies somewhere with the message communication. When you talk to your client, always use facts and figures instead of generic or irrelevant information, so to ensure that your message is conveyed and conveyed complete. Well, the following guidelines should help you to achieve concreteness is using specific facts and figures and choosing image building words. That is general, like he's very intelligent student of class and stood first in the class. This gives this general idea gives you how intelligent he is. All right. Accuracy is purpose of clarity. So in effective business communication, the message should be very much clear so that reader can understand it easily. You should always choose precise words, always choose familiar and easy words, and construct effective sentences and paragraphs. But in business communication, always go for the words no longer than you need. If you have a choice between long sentence or a phrase or word and shorter one, and you think that a shorter one can convey the exact meaning, go for the shorter one. You should try your level best to use familiar, easy to understand words so that your reader will quickly understand it. Another important C is courtesy. That is very important, and at times it is not there when we are going through this communication process. People do not bother to be courteous. Knowing your audience allows you to use statements of courtesy. Be aware of your message receiver, your audience. True courtesy involves being aware not only of the perspective of others but also their feelings. Courtesy stems from a sincere you attitude. It is not merely politeness with mechanical insertion of please and thank you. Although applying socially accepted manners is a form of courtesy, rather it is politeness that grow out respect and concern for others. Courteous communication generate a special tone in their writing and speaking. Correctness. At the core of correctness is proper grammar, punctuation and spelling. However, message must be perfect grammatically and mechanically. The term correctness as applied to business messages also mean 3 characteristics. Use the right level of language. Check the accuracy of figures, facts and words. Maintain acceptable writing mechanics. And with this we end with our, we finish with our lecture 4's revision that was all about 7 C's of communication skills. Now lecture 5 talks about business communication. What defines business communication? Purpose of business communication, importance of it, what are the different types of technical documents, what is business letter about, what is the nature, purpose, parts, style and punctuation and format consideration for business letters, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about what is business writing. Is it important to success in business? Well, it is. It lets you conduct business. It takes time, but it is rewarding. It costs the company, but it serves the purpose. It reflects your interpersonal communication skills and help you reach your destination. It often involves teamwork, so it is not about I or you, it's about we. Alright, so let us have a word again about business letters. The business letter is the basic means of communication between two companies. That's what we know. And we know that Letter is the document used for external communication, however, memo is used for internal communication within the company. Most business letters have a formal tone, but they can be formal as well as informal. The purpose of business documentation, well, you write business letters to inform readers of specific information, or you write to persuade them. That is what we talked in general when we talked about any kind of business documentation. However, business letters can even function as advertisements. Like if somebody will open a new institute, the person can write letters to all the concerned companies or individuals or group of people to come and visit the company or come or join the company. So here the letter is being used as an advertisement. The parts of business letter, the anatomy will include dateline, inside address, salutation, body, complimentary clause, signature, and writer's identification or the typist identification. Now, what is this dateline? Current date written out as month, day, and complete year is dateline. Inside address, name and address of the business to whom you are writing, the one who is going to receive the letter. Salutation is letter's greeting. You use the same name you used in the inside address, like Dr., Dear, Mr., Mrs., Ms., or Sir or Madam, whatsoever. Body, message, or meat of the letter is basically meat of the letter, the body of the letter. Complimentary clause, letters goodbye, using phrases such as yours truly, sincerely, best regards, kind regards, faithfully. Signature is writer's handwritten signature, and writer's identification, writer's type, name, and address. And at times in the end you have the initials of the typist as well. Look at the model once again. Everything is quite clear. You can see the date, inside address, salutation, body, complimentary clause, writer's identification, and enclosure as well. Enclosure is the announcement of if you are attaching any documents with your letter. Normally, if you would receive a cover letter, you will have a resume enclosed. Business letter writing checklist. What are the things? Well, we already are done with revision of our 7 C's. However, if you look at these ideas, what they are referring to 7 C's, and these are musts of business writing skills. Keep it short, that is conciseness. Cut needless words and needless information. Cut stale phrases and redundant statements. Keep it simple, to the point. And this is about clarity. Use familiar words, short sentences, and short paragraphs. Keep your subject matter as simple as possible. Use a conversational style. Keep it strong, completeness, and concreteness. Use concrete words and examples. Keep it to the subject. Keep it sincere, courtesy, be human and as friendly as possible. Write as if you were talking to your reader. The letters can be of many types, but we have discussed these documents under 2 categories, informative and persuasive. We understand that informative letters deal with information that you need to convey. However, the purpose of a persuasive letter is to tell your idea to someone. Not only you are trying to get them to understand, but you want them to do something or take some action. So the formula we embed into our persuasive letter is AIDA formula. The AIDA formula is, it has 4 paragraphs in your letter, and each paragraph has a purpose. Now, what is this purpose? The first paragraph will be to catch attention. The second paragraph will be to develop interest. The third paragraph will be state your desire. And the fourth paragraph will be talking about what action do you want your reader to take. So, if you are able to go through this AIDA formula successfully, you are going to have a successful letter. In a nutshell, business letter in English is formal paper communication between 2 or more than 2 formal people or businesses or institutions, and usually sent through the post office or sometimes by courier. Business letters are sometimes called snail mail in contrast to email, which is faster. So there is a difference of speed. This was all about lecture 5. Now let's see what we discussed in lecture 6. Well, lecture 6 was about direct and indirect newsletters, and this we discussed in relevance with good news and bad newsletters. We discussed examples, how to write a bad newsletter, what are the objectives, approaches, and we talked about different formats of letters. We talked about yes and no adjustment letters as well. Look at this example of direct versus indirect. First of all, you need to be very clear about what can be achieved with a direct letter, what can we achieve with an indirect letter. So alright, let us again go through this comparison to quickly remind ourselves what can we achieve through a direct letter and what are the differences between direct and indirect letter. Alright, so direct letters are good for good news letters, non-emotional issues, audiences that prefer a straightforward approach. However, the indirect approach is best for bad news, less direct readers, and some sensitive situations and issues that need explaining. Now, introductions in direct letter establishes a reason for writing and presents main idea. However, your introduction in indirect letters act as a buffer with a positive or neutral statement and complements the article, the idea, whether you agree or disagree, and appreciates and thanks and give you more information. Body of the direct letter provides and explains the details, and body of the indirect letter explains situation first, leads up to the point or issue, states point and issue, if possible link bad news with benefit, and does not place blame. Conclusion of a direct letter reminds of any deadlines, presents a call for action, looks to future. However, the conclusion of an indirect letter does not apologize and gracious closing. It keeps a gracious closing. So this was a clear difference between a direct and indirect approach in letter writing. Now, goals in communicating bad news. First of all, you need to determine what is your purpose that you want to achieve when delivering a bad news. You want to achieve its acceptance. You want to still maintain a positive image. However, you don't want to be incomplete in conveying the message, and you want clarity of the message to avoid additional correspondence. So you cannot hide the bad news. You want protection, avoid creating legal liabilities. So don't use careless language and avoid the good guy syndrome. Now, what is the strategy, the anatomy of a bad news letter or an indirect letter? You always use a buffer in the beginning, followed with reasons, the bad news itself, and the closing. Now, the buffer is about you open with a neutral but meaningful statement that does not mention the bad news all of a sudden. Reasons are that you explain the causes of the bad news before disclosing it. Then you give the bad news, reveal the bad news without emphasizing it, provide an alternative or compromise if possible, and end with a personalized, forward-looking, pleasant statement. Avoid referring to the bad news again. How do we buffer the opening? There are different ways to buffer the opening. The intent of the buffer is basically to reduce the shock or pain. The examples can be buffer are that if there is a good news or a bad news, start with the good news. Begin with a compliment if appropriate. Give appreciation. Agree with the reader about something. Provide facts. Show understanding. Give an apology if appropriate. And then you are ready to start with the second stage of your indirect letter. Now, What are the objectives of an indirect approach? That it eases the reader audience into the part of the message that justifies the decision or builds goodwill. It conveys the bad news without bruising the reader's feeling, the audience's feeling. It helps reader know the decision is firm, fair, and still build the goodwill. Now, some approaches for the buffer are: you provide an agreement, or you provide an appreciation, or you provide some kind of co-appreciation, or you offer some good news, or you develop some kind of understanding with the reader, or you show the fairness of the process. So you can do either of them, or you can involve 2 or 3 or more of them together into your message. The buffer basics are basically avoid saying no straight away. Don't build up false hopes. Don't apologize, because it's not a mistake you are making, it's a decision. Do not make it irrelevant, or blame it somebody, or do strict to the point. Do not go into irrelevant talk, because then you are eating up your conciseness element. And so do you have to be to the point. Now, make answer clear but positive. If there is a refusal, you have to state the refusal. And if you will not do it clearly, it will create ambiguity and will build up false hopes. Place bad news in middle of the paragraph. Minimize space saying it, get to the point. Use if or when to suggest conditions for future good news. And don't be blunt. Don't be hurting. Offer alternative if possible. Again, avoid false hopes. Now, use of the direct approach is basically for internal memos or internal documents, for routine bad news to other businesses, for audience who prefer direct news, for situations that demand firmness, for minor negatives, for close friends and associates, for bad news first, then reason, then a courteous close, for shorter message if it has to be conveyed. All right, so this was all about the direct and indirect approach adopted to document a business letter. Now we are going to discuss about the inquiry letter. What do we have in inquiry letter, and what do we ask in inquiry letter, and precisely what is the purpose of inquiry letter? Because we understand the format is all the same is all about these letters, and either they are formal or they are informal. However, they can be direct or they can be indirect. So after understanding the approach, we need to understand what is the difference of purpose in each kind of these letters. So we are going to discuss few of these letters and their purposes. So for inquiry letter, the purpose is to ask for information. State clearly what information you are requesting and why. Write specific, concise, to the point questions that are both easy to understand and easy to answer. Use bullets to highlight the questions. Leave space for the readers to answer the questions. Attach a questionnaire if you have some more than 5 questions. And specify when you need the answers by thanking the reader. Now, what are these special request letters about? The purpose of special request letter is to make a special demand. That can be an unusual demand. So start clearly who you are and why you are writing. Convince the reader to help. Motivate the reader for his or her help. Show you are hardworking. Discuss your reason for the request. Show you are understanding the situation and have done research. Discuss why the person you are writing to is the best person to help. Write specific, concise, to the point questions that are both easy to understand and easy to answer. You can attach a questionnaire if you would want to by writing the questions and leaving some space for answer. Use bullets to highlight the questions. Leave space for the reader to answer the questions. Attach a questionnaire if you have more than 5 questions. And specify when you need the answers by. And thank the reader. Offer the reader a copy of the report or results. And ask for necessary permission. Now, what are these sales letters about? The purpose of sales letter is to persuade the readers to buy a product, service, idea, or point of view. Grab the reader's attention, highlight the product's appeal, show the product's use, conclude with a request for action, buy it or do it, appeal to the reader with reader-centered issue, health, convenience, service, saving money or anything else. Use concrete words and colorful verbs, be ethical and truthful, and don't brag or go on unnecessarily. Now, in customer relation letters, the purpose is to establish and maintain goodwill relationship with the customers. So you have to be diplomatic, you have to be persuasive, you write from and understand the reader's perspective, and there are several types of customer relation letters, and each may have a different purpose with a slight change of objective. What are these claim letters about? Although it's a type of customer letter, but these can be categorized as another group of letters that are called claim letters. It chooses you can choose a direct or indirect approach depending on the kind of news that you are conveying. Direct is best for routine claim letters. Claim is backed by guarantee, warranty, or contract or reputation or something else. However, indirect is best for arguable claim letters when the claim is debatable or unusual. Use a professional rationale, if possible positive, tone and not a hostile, negative and emotional tone. Clearly describe product or service with necessary details. Explain the problem with details. Propose a fair, precise and appropriate request or adjustment, and present an explicit deadline. So these are some of the main characteristics of a claim letter. Now a word about adjustment letters. Again, it's a type of customer relation letter. However, the purpose here is respond to claim letter with solution. Now in this you work to reconcile the situation and restore the customer's trust in your company. You are prompt, courteous and decisive. You use a positive or neutral tone without being begrudging or taking full blame. Two types are either yes adjustment letters or no adjustment letters. Now, what is this yes adjustment letters? Yes adjustment letters start with an apology and admit claim is justified and quickly present favorable news. Specifically state how you are correcting the problem and explain what happened and why things went against the expectations, and conclude with a friendly, positive tone. However, in no adjustment letters, you use an indirect approach. You thank the customer for writing, you restate the customer's problem, you explain why this happened and what were the reason without placing a blame. Clearly state discussion without hedging, link no to benefits, and conclude with concise, gracious statement to open the door to future business. Now lecture 7 and 8 basically were about the cover letters, and we talked about acceptance letter, we talked about acknowledgement letters, we talked about complaint letters more in detail, and also we talked about some resignation letter and letter of recommendation too. So we are on with letter writing, and the lecture 7 also covers letter writing, a part of that. What is this cover letter? Cover letter basically provides the following information. It identifies an employment area. It points out your source of information to apply for that particular job. I'm talking about a cover letter for a resume. It summarizes your qualification, your experience, and refer the reader to your resume and ask for an interview to make this a personalized request. Now, content of the cover letter, in the first paragraph you should state what job you are applying for and how you learned about it. You should also state your general qualification for the job and your specific expertise that enable you to apply for it, and pick out the most relevant qualifications listed in your resume and discuss them in detail. Be as specific as possible and refer the reader to your resume for additional details. State where and when you can be reached and express your willingness to come to an interview or supply further information. Now, what are these acceptance letters? This letter is written in order to accept or a received job offer. It should be written within a week of receiving the offer. The format is what we have discussed earlier during our lecture. Now, what are these acceptance letters? As we I'm sorry. The acknowledgement letters. The acknowledgement letters, in this you acknowledge receiving an item. It can be a letter, it can be an item, it can be anything that comes in and you want to acknowledge the reception. In this letter you acknowledge receiving an item, and it serves as a good public relationing practice. In this letter you mention what you and when, how many items you received and the date, and in a short and polite manner. Now, complaint letters is one letter that we are writing all the time. When customers are not satisfied with goods and services that are offered by businesses, they write complaint letters asking for fixing these situations. These are written in order to be more effective. The tone of the letter should not be angry. In order to obtain a positive response, you should not vent your anger in the letter. You should state your claim supported by factual evidence and ask for adjustment. Now, the next lecture was regarding memos and email writing, and we discussed the important elements of technical communication, that are audiences and purpose. We discussed the difference between these conventions of writing and the writing strategies, some context study and logical organization issues. What is this active conclusion? And then we had some practice of memo writing by using the anatomy of the document. Now, we agreed on this, that three genres that we encounter in business communication are most often are the ones which demand our attention. These are letter, email, and memos. Because why do they demand our attention is that they are the reflectors of our business or our work or our professional activity that we keep and maintain. They reflect image of you and your company, so they are called reflectors. And they often act as a wrapper to larger technical document. You will find memos, letters are always coming, and emails are always coming with other larger documents, maybe a resume or a proposal or a report. So they are often known as wrappers too. When you encounter a new genre, remember the two most important elements are audience and purpose. Memo conventions are that they are less formal and shorter than letters, and they are mostly used inside organization. However, the email is electronic based version of the memo. You will find the format and anatomy almost the same. However, there are few things that you have to be more careful about when you're writing an email. Whenever you're writing a letter, email, or memo, you need to be very careful about organizing your paragraph logically and clearly, and these 6 points enable you to design a clear and logical flow of your paragraph. So what you write in a paragraph is that you always state the subject and purpose in the subject line, you explain the problem in detail in the supportive details, and you describe, in supporting details, you describe how the problem inconveniences you, state what you would like the reader to do about it, and in the concluding as a part of the paragraph, I did not say section, I said part of the paragraph, because paragraph is one whole. You thank the reader or you conclude the message, and you either link it with the next paragraph or you finish it if it's only one. You always keep your paragraph short, especially in memos and emails, no more information than necessary, because otherwise it will become a letter. You use list, headings, and tables if required to make your message very clear, because memo is already very short, and if you will not use these aids, your message may remain to be ambiguous. So the basics that we need to review about these documents is that pay attention to tone whenever you are writing, because in speaking you sometimes you get a second chance to redo your tone, or by the use of some words you can help it out. However, when you write a document and it is gone, you send it away, the tone can never be redone. So pay attention to tone. Have a brief state your purpose introduction. Review the context. If writing a response to some other communication, repeat the details of the context. Follow a good news first, bad news last strategy. Use a reader-centered strategy where reader and writer usually have a mutual goal. They both want something. Both parties needs to feel they have gained something. Organize paragraphs logically, because that will make it understandable. You need to have introduction, some narrative, some petition, and again justification. So always remember that memos are a form of internal correspondence for employees, and the format of memo differ extensively from letter, and memo formats are very, they are short in length. All right. Now, procedure and information memo. There are two types of memo that we talked about in detail, procedure and information. These routine messages usually flow downwards. They deliver company information and describe procedures. Tone is important in any kind of document, business document that you are producing. Then we have request and reply memos. And then we talked about the characteristics of a good memo or effective memo in email. You need to have heading, to, from, and date and subject section. You need to have a single topic that you want to address, some conversational tone or informal tone if it is applicable, and then you need to have some conciseness inside, and visual signaling help highlighting your message. And in order to do that, you can use highlighting, you can use numbers, and you can use bullets. These are some characteristics of effective memo and emails. Then we talked about the writing process, that is to analyze and anticipate, research and compose, revise, proofread, and evaluate, like the writing process, the stages of writing process. An organization of memo will include heading, subject line, opening, body, and conclusion, like other documents of business communication. Lecture 10 was regarding email writing, where we discussed the writing process, structure and format, opening, body, and closing, critical thinking, and the mistakes that we should not make in writing an email. Well, we understand that the purpose of writing an email is having a communication across quickly. So before we write an email, we should ask these questions to ourselves, whether we do need to write an email or not. We also learned about business meetings. What are they? How can we plan and execute a business meeting? And how to write meeting minutes. And understanding what a meeting is, that's a schedule of gathering scheduled gathering of group members for a structured discussion guided by a designated chairperson. We got to know that essentials of business meeting involve a schedule, a structure, and a chairperson. And we again have some stages and organization of the activity, because it's a business activity, so it goes by a plan. And the plan involves several questions, as well as an agenda that is again a technical document. Business agenda deals with purpose of meeting, name of group members, presence and absent, again date, time, and about the time, when and where, call to order, when the meeting started, when it ended, approval of agenda, approval of previous meetings minute, individual and committee reports, unfinished business, finished business, new business started, announcement, and adjournment. All right. So how do we take minutes as a process of noting down and recording what happened during the meeting? That again needs to be applied where we need to apply 7 C's of communication. We cannot forget 7 C's of application, 7 C's of writing, and the writing process, the stages of writing in any of the business activity that we are doing. So look at the steps that involve in planning a business meeting: setting the agenda, talking about the participants in meeting, resolving conflict, writing minutes, strategies to improve your listening effectiveness, because listening is one key skill that is all the time in use when you are working in a business scenario. However, knowing your and determining your purpose always helps you in improving whatsoever activity you are doing. Selecting the participants, selecting the agenda, picking the convenient time and the venue, preparing notes for meeting, distributing them, and getting all the copies ready and checking all the equipment before meeting is all these things enable you to ensure a successful gathering of busy people. So there are three types of participants in these meetings: somebody who chairs or who's the one who takes a decision, the secretary who assists the decision maker, and the participants. And they all have their roles to play during the meeting, before the meeting, and after the meeting. Now, before we finish our talk for today, we need to understand and we need to go through some listening strategy that will help us strengthen and improve our skill. Especially before the meeting, you need to prepare yourself mentally. Write down one thing you already know about the topic. Listen to confirm that this is it that you are going to be indulged in. Prepare the subject area, reading in advance to establish a context. Predict what you will hear, outline format. Write down 2 to 3 questions related to the topic. Any 2 or 3 things that you can think of. You expect to find out, you would like to know, or you didn't understand from the previous meeting or maybe a reading that you have done so far. Listen for keywords. Don't write down everything. Keep things in head. Leave lots of white space on the page and use a numbering system. Listen for organizational signposts. First of all, next, after that, or by using transitional devices or signal devices. Listen for summaries and for repeats because they provide you with sum-up information or summarized version of the information. And sit with an energetic mind and avoid mind drifting. Link to what you know. Write your notes to yourself and provide examples and comparisons. After the meeting, you must review and read over your notes as soon as you can because later on you will forget them. And use hours between classes if you think that you will not be getting time once you are home. And this is especially for students. Transform, manipulate the information in some way, make a chart, make a diagram, make a mind map or flow chart so you go through the process once and understand and able to assimilate that. Well, this was all about today's lecture, that is lecture 30, where we had revision of our first 11 lecture. And in first 11 lecture, what we discussed about, we started from communication, moving on to business communication, how to make a champion of business communication, the participants, the barriers, different types of documents, the writing process, the writing challenges, 7 C's of communication, different formats of writing these documents, especially letter writing, memo writing, email writing, meetings and writing meeting agendas and meeting minutes. This was all about for today's talk. We are going to see you again. So this was all about today's talk. I will see you in the next lecture, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.